About a month ago, Destiny 2 Lightfall released to the public, changing up the Destiny landscape once again with its giant add-on that it did for the year, giving us a new subclass called the Strand, bringing us onto a new planet, Neptune, and bringing so much more. Many people have been long-lasting waiting for this, and as for me, who just got back into Destiny last year with the Witch Queen, I was very excited to see how they were going to keep my interest with this, because I've gotten to the point where I'm kind of just getting tired of online gaming and the amount of updates and everything to that. But Destiny has continued, I will say, to always bring me back with its giant add-ons. And I will say Lightfall might not be one of the best ones they've done, but it does contain a lot of fun elements, and I'm excited to sit here and discuss it with you guys. Now, what I do want to say before we get any further into this video is thank you so much for watching. This is Critics Play Games. We are film critics who love talking video games as well, and that's what this channel is all about. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, as well as comment down below your guys' thoughts. Are you guys fans of Destiny? Are you thinking about getting back into it? Well, this is Destiny technically in 2023. We did a video talking about 2022, and this is for newcomers, people who are maybe just into Destiny and want my overall thoughts. And last but not least, rest in peace to Lance Riddick. I cannot believe that he has passed away. He was phenomenal when it came down to the gaming community, whether it was in the Horizon franchise, Destiny, but as well as in the John Wick and, of course, the show The Wire. So I do want to give a mention to him because he absolutely deserves it. But without further ado, this is Critics Play Games. Release of Destiny 2 Lightfall, it's long-lasting, bringing Destiny's first decade closer to its dramatic conclusion that Bungie has set up. Technically only one expansion left called The Final Shape, which should premiere next year, which will remain and continue the Light and Darkness saga. Whether you love the game for the lore, hardcore PvP gameplay, or deep character customization options, the Lightfall expansion itself has something for every person that is involved with Destiny 2, and I think that's one of the things that I loved so much about this DLC. Is it's not the best one. I think Witch Queen was still 10 times better, but I think this expansion, first off, delivers the coolest new world that Destiny has given us in quite a while. Neptune itself is one of the most unique landscapes that I've seen in the Destiny world, and I found myself just wanting to go back to that world, do bounties, do patrols, investigate, find new missions. And for me, when it came down to the Witch Queen, I didn't really care about exploring that planet all too much besides in the campaign. I thought the campaign for the Witch Queen was a little bit better, specifically when it came down to story, difficulty, bosses, and actually uniqueness to the Destiny world. Lightfall falls a little bit back on that. I found, we'll talk about the campaign in a second, but I definitely found that it was more of the world that I was more involved with than anything else. But if we're talking about this, if you're a new player thinking, should I jump into Destiny back in 2023? The Witch Queen is still the best add-on to jump into within this, but of course Lightfall is the brand new one that everyone's wanting to jump into. You have the Strand, this brand new subclass, which I will say is probably one of my favorites. Not at first, but once I started just taking more time with it. And I think new players should invest themselves if they are wanting to. They have to understand that this is not a game that you can just jump right into. They do not make it easy. You absolutely should watch recap videos on everything. Specifically, you want to know about the lore and the story, but if you're just wanting to get into it and more onto the gameplay realm and have fun with friends, if you don't have a friend who's not into Destiny, you got some research ahead of you. If you do, absolutely hit your best friend up and have him tell you a little bit more about the world. I had to have one of mine do that for the Witch Queen, and it definitely helped out because he was able to map out exactly what I should do per week and exactly what my quality of life type of improvements are for this type of Destiny. And I think with Lightfall, they add some new class mobility, which adds moving around guns and changing around what you want your loadout to be. For me personally, I've never really cared about the loadout to say, and I've never really understood and cared about that. I'm more just like, this is my gun, this is the gun, this is the class that I like using. Some people like to get a little bit deeper. That is okay, specifically if you're jumping into the raids and everything else into those natures. But I think new players, Bungie tries to make it a little bit easier each time with getting new players in. I will not go against that. But at the same time, there's always so much to build against. So the best way to kind of put it forward is go with what's new. Take the Lightfall and go forward with that. Everything else before that, just kind of completely forget. You can look up the lore, you can look up the story. but that's about it. And kind of try to find your grind and what you enjoy to level up. So specifically for me, I always do this thing where I only really set aside 2 to 3 days of Destiny a week for me, so I don't get completely burnt out like I did last year on it. And I like to sit there, and with Lightfall persistently, I was like, okay, I'm gonna beat the campaign. Once I beat the campaign, we'll start doing a lot of the other stuff, whether it's the seasonal quests that they do, which I've always given credit to Destiny. I love that the battle passes actually have quests involved, and I actually think this is one of the best involvements of a quest. These new locations, these new areas to take on enemies and everything of that nature are some of my favorites that I think Destiny has actually provided in quite a while. And I actually think if you are someone who's wanting to invest time with this, the battle pass is worth it this time around, mostly just for the quest itself. Even if you're not wanting to do the battle pass this year, there still is Gambit, Crucible, Vanguard, so many different missions that you'll find yourself wanting to get involved with, some that you've played constantly before if you were back in the day on Destiny, or if you're new to Destiny, you have a ton of content to jump into. Do understand that, again, the reason I say that you should just start with Lightfall and go from there is because that's what the new thing is. That's what everyone is playing, and that's what you should be getting into. Speaking about Lightfall, you had the Neptune, or Manuna, who is the new location that you head to here, which is this bright city. Kind of has this, like, imagine Blade Runner 2049, but it's more lighter and poppy. And the best way I can kind of put it is, like, imagine like a Ratchet and Clank city that you're kind of exploring. That's the way that I took it, which this city is completely overran by fallen enemies and Cabal invaders. And for me, Neptune has harbors and office buildings and an arcade, and pretty much on the size of Savathon's throne world that we got in The Witch Queen and Europa. But I think one of the best things about this is that this has this new entity to it. And one of those things is the new subclass, the Strand. All these subclasses that they've really much given us, none have really... They've always tried to change and upgrade them and put them in these 2.0s, and that Darkness one they did a couple years ago, I didn't really love. The Strand is the first one that ever since they added in the fire throwing and all that stuff, because I play as a Titan, the Solar was always my favorite. The Strand is easily an up and coming in between that, specifically when it comes down to PvE combat, and I love it. PvP, I'm still trying to figure out my gist to it all, but the Strand, that's the reason you want to play Lightfall first. It's the reason to buy the DLC, it's the reason to play through it all, because it is one of the coolest things that they've ever given us in here. It was honestly one of the most unique elements, because just speaking about from a Titan, you get this grappling hook that can grapple you to certain areas. Not the best, but I do like getting to use it. But what I actually love using is switching it to the grenades, and one of the grenades it has is I like throw it and it kills a bunch of enemies, and if anyone's too strong for the grenade, it strands them up like a spider, and then I can go in like all Prototype style. If you've ever played Prototype, you know what I'm talking about, and you get these blades on your hands and you're just ripping through people. It is awesome, and I cannot go against more of saying how cool the Strand is, and easily becoming one of my favorite things that easily Destiny has ever placed inside of its entire thing. Now, with that said though, you get this new planet, you get the Strand. What else do you get? Well, you get an awesome campaign, and I say awesome because while the stories kind of lost me and I didn't really care for it, and I will say the last final boss for this campaign I found to be very disappointing. Really hard boss to beat. For me, this is kind of one of the things that really worked for me the most. And I found that, look at it, is while this campaign does have a lot more difficulty things to it, specifically this new enemy that has this giant scythe, it's called like the Tormentor, it is damn near impossible if you're by yourself and you're playing on one of the harder difficulties. I definitely had to switch over to the easier one just so I could get this review out. But heading back over, once you start to get the gist of it, and I actually went through and beat it all on the hardest difficulty, the final boss is kind of not that big of a pushover, and it's something that I feel like we should have gotten a little bit earlier, and all this build up, it just didn't really go anywhere. And I'm hoping that this feels more of like the in-between to what we're getting into the final DLC, and it's kind of like, this is the build up, let's see what happens in the final DLC moment. Because the Witness here I think is actually a really cool villain, but you don't get enough of him. It's more of just Callias, and you expect a little bit more from him if I'm being honest. But I will say the new supporting characters, specifically these Cloud Striders that live in Neptune, are awesome. They kind of remind me of the Silver Surfer. I was pretty much all down for them. When it comes down to the campaign, you're mostly just there to go through the new environments, shoot some shit, and have some fun. And if you have friends, that's absolutely the best way to play Destiny, is with friends, because the story I don't really care about. Some people are really invested into the lore of it all. If you're one of those people that wants to be invested into it, you absolutely should. It seems like something that would be up my alley. I just don't have the time to invest to go back all the way. Me though, what always comes down to Destiny is that end game. What do you get to do after the campaign? And I feel like for me, I'm getting a little bit more out of this one than I did the Witch Queen. That's going through Gambit, Vanguard, and multiplayer, which now have these commendations to kind of allow the players to have feedback, something that like Overwatch and some other multiplayer games have been having. I really like that they did that, good quality of life. But the end game afterwards is there's a lot of side quests that they open up. There's a lot of new things to kind of explore, specifically missions within the season pass, but also just like new legendary equipment that you're gonna want to unlock. And after going through and unlocking some of them, they're pretty damn awesome. The additions to what they were able to add in Lightfall makes it worth, again, Destiny. If you're someone who's been invested in it for a while, you're going to enjoy it. It's not the best DLC that they've released. I think it's actually more on the weaker side, but I do think that Bungie is able to still add enough to where that $60 price tag does fit and makes it feel worth it in the long run. I always equivalent this. I love that Bungie has been really much building on the world, building on the engine, and just making the best game possible. And I have a big feeling that whenever they do actually announce a Destiny 3, I think that'll be the version of the game they actually do want to create. Destiny 2 Lightfall is a great new addition to this world. It's not the best, because some of the DLC in the past has been incredible, but the Strand itself is probably the coolest new subclass that they've ever added into the game, and specifically when it comes down to new weapons, new abilities, this is the coolest new thing that they've added, and it is the reason to jump back into it. Is it the reason that Destiny is the must-play multiplayer game of the year? No. I don't think I'll be playing a lot of it as much as I did in Witch Queen, because last year, whew, I put about 160 hours into Destiny 2. That was my most played game last year, and that is quite shocking for me, to say the least. If you're a new player and you're wanting to get back into Destiny, start with Lightfall. Is it an easy way to get into? No, specifically if you want to know about the lore, but if you're wanting to just get back into everything, start a new player. They have a whole new way of segueing into it, but once you get into Lightfall, you'll absolutely really enjoy it. If you're someone who's coming back and playing an old character, they've already bumped everyone up, so you're starting out on the same playing field. And if you're someone who's just, well, I did play Witch Queen last year, I haven't bought Lightfall yet, is it worth it? That really comes down to your own preference. For me, I'll say this. I'm pretty much done with multiplayer games. The reason I still am going through Lightfall is, one, I pre-ordered it, and two, I did want to see what Destiny was able to do. I think the grind is still there. I'm not fully as locked into it as I was within the Witch Queen, just because I was very burnt out on it last year within Destiny, but I'll still definitely be coming back to Destiny over the next couple of weeks to even maybe months, depending on what they add into the season passes, because again, I bought every single thing, and maybe I shouldn't have. But I think if you're, again, someone who's maybe wanting to come back, maybe just buy the $60 add-on, go through Destiny again if you enjoy it. But if you're someone who's like, I'm just completely burnt out on Destiny, this isn't gonna give much more to you. Again, that's my Destiny 2 Lightfall in 2023. I think it's worth playing, but specifically that really just comes down to your preference, and I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts down below. Thank you so much again for watching, and again, rest in peace to Lance Riddick. I cannot give that enough. This dude was a damn force of nature when it came down to everything involved within this world, and he technically is one of the biggest characters, so I hope that Bungie is able to put something in there for him. But with that said, this is Critics Play Games, and I'll see you guys on the next side.